Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our virtual community again with Tattered Covered Bookstore. My name is Devin Cochran. I'm with the Denver Public Library. And tonight we are here to talk with Tamara Winfrey Harris and discuss her latest book, Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power. Before we begin, I want to talk about Tattered Cover. Tattered Cover Bookstore is a local independent bookstore with 4 locations in the Denver metro area, soon to be 5. They plan to open their children's location at Stanley Marketplace later this summer. It's also their 50th anniversary in 2021, and they know that they wouldn't have made it this far without the support of the Colorado community. So thank you for shopping locally. The Denver Public Library As for the Denver Public Library, I want to announce that several of our locations are open to the public and are also still offering curbside services. You can stay up to date with us by visiting denverlibrary.org, where you can also access many of our services. Tonight's conversation will be moderated by Leslie Williams. She's the senior librarian of the Pauline Robinson branch of the Denver Public Library. The first book she read by a Black author was Mildred Taylor's Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, when she was in 6th grade. When not at work, she can be found binge watching Netflix or making playlists on YouTube. Our author, Tamara Winfrey Harris, is a writer who specializes in the ever-evolving space where current events, politics, and pop culture interests with race and intersect with race and gender. Tamara has been published in media outlets including the New York Times, The Atlantic, Cosmopolitan, New York Magazine, and the Los Angeles Times. And she has been called to share her analysis on media outlets including NPR's Weekend Edition and Janet Mock's So Popular on MSNBC.com. And on university campuses nationwide, Tamara's first book, The Sisters Are All Right, Changing the Brooklyn Narrative of Black Women in America, was published by Barrett Kohler Publishers in 2015. The book won the Phyllis Wheatley Award, Indie Fab Award, Independent Publishers Living Now Award, and the IPPY Award. Her sophomore effort, Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power, was released in March 2021 from Barrett Kohler Publishers. Tamara is also the co-founder of Centering Sisters LLC, an organization that unapologetically addresses the needs and issues of Black women, girls, and femmes. Tamara is a native of Gary, Indiana, and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She graduated with a BA degree from Greenlee School of Journalism at Iowa State University. So that's our authors, and I would love to welcome them to the screen. Please give them a warm welcome. Also, for anyone in need, there are closed captions available for this program. There y'all are.
Here we
Thought
are.
we lost y'all for a second. Hey. So I will leave you all to it, but how are y'all doing? Y'all doing okay?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I'm honored to be here this evening.
All right, that sounds good. I'll leave y'all to it.
Thank you, Devin.
And I want to make sure that people also know that we are joined by Renee Alston, who is one of the many amazing women who opened their hearts and shared their story in Dear Black Girl. And she's going to share more with us later.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So Leslie, I know you're driving us and you're going to interview me, but we spoke just before we came on, and I asked if I might read a little bit of the preface. So may I start with that?
Yes, please.
Awesome. So the preface is called We Are All Right, and it kind of harkens back to my first book and the idea that Black women and girls are inherently okay instead of inherently damaged, which is what society would often have us believe. And it starts, my Black girls, you tell me things. You tell me how you love your mamas, but kind of hate them too. You tell me about the fuck boys at school who text dirty messages. You tell me about beauty insecurities, 2 big noses and 5 heads. You tell me who you like, showing me pictures of boys on IG and giggling, ain't he cute? You tell me these things and I smile. It's been a while since I was a girl, but I remember hating my parents' rules and being insecure about my looks. I remember the trifling boys and the superfine crushes. Some things about Black girlhood never change. But you tell me other things too. You tell me about anxiety or depression that will not let go. You tell me about social media memes that leave you feeling demeaned and hated. You tell me about boys and men who violate you and families who cannot deal with the devastation of sexual assault. You tell me about carrying the burden of friends and family who have been murdered. You tell me about families who cannot accept your queer identity. You tell me about schools that suspend you for petty reasons. You tell me how people assume you are angry, unfeminine, grown, and hypersexual before you can even find out who you are for yourself. You tell me these things and I worry. I remember that the world does not value Black girls like it should, and some things that are too common in Black girlhood must change. And that's just a short excerpt from the preface.
Thank you so much for writing this book and for all of the wonderful letters. My first question actually comes from the preface. Can you tell us more about the Letter for Black Girls project, how you recruited the women to write, how long it took to get the letters back, and the vetting process to get the right letters for the different chapters?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, the idea, like, it was pure serendipity. I was doing this intergenerational workshop with two dear friends of mine, and there were 12 Black girls participating. I thought it would be neat if each one of them would leave with a letter from a Black woman. So I kind of offhandedly went on Facebook and just asked if anybody would be willing to write a letter. And I asked, women to be vulnerable, and I asked them to be feminist and pro-Black girl and a lot of other things. And surprisingly to me, it went viral. That call went viral. So instead of 12 letters, I got more than 50 from around the world. I got one from Switzerland even. And they kept coming. Like, I believe, Renee, I think you were part of a writing party. That's how I got your letter. I got a big, thick envelope of letters in the mail.
Yeah, shout out to Aisha Turman. Aisha actually created a cohort with Black women in Brooklyn and called for us to come and to write together and to fellowship together. And I think it was important to have that fellowship to talk about our collective experiences because it felt like home. It felt like your sister and your auntie. And so we understood that Tamara's mission was for us to be transparent. But in that, we created an atmosphere that made transparency easy. And so writing these letters to Black girls was actually like writing it to our younger selves.
I had never heard that story before. I just know she did it twice. Aisha did that twice.
Yep, I did it twice.
I got two big, thick packets of letters from her. And so, they kept coming, but I realized one in reading the letters, I mean, like your letter, Renee, like, yes, I was giving individual girls letters, but it's like some of these letters need to be seen by more than one girl. Like, I kept thinking of all the girls that could benefit from these letters. And it seemed like one good way to do that would be to write a book. And so a lot of, Renee's letter was unique in being kind of focused on a particular issue. A lot of the initial letters I got were kind of general guidance and general inspiration, which was important. And you'll see that at the beginning and end of the book. But it was also important for me to see Black girls. I wanted Black girls to see themselves in the book in all the ways they show up in the world. So all their identities. And I also wanted to make sure the book represented a lot of issues and experiences that Black girls have that we like to pretend that they don't. And so, in the middle, I tried to proactively look for women, biracial women, women with queer identity, women who had survived sexual assault, women who were adopted, women who had experienced incarceration, all of those things, because I didn't want any girl to feel like I'm not here and I'm alone in this experience that I've had.
Yes, and that's the exact reason why I was hooked after the introduction. After I found the book on this shelf at the library, and it was just like, shelved, and I said, "Dear Black girl," I said, "Ooh," and picked it up, and I recognized your name from the first book that you've written, and then just checked it out, and I read it. I thought because of the size, I'd read it like right away. But after in each chapter, after you do the introduction and all the letters, you have a part in the book where it says, "Know this." And there's all these historical, you give reference to the different historical things you talk about, and you also provide real life definitions for that stuff. And after that, you also have the part where it's the letter to my Black girl self. And that was so powerful for me because I had to sit back and reflect. So after I read a chapter, I couldn't go to the next chapter because I had to reflect about what, if I was going to write the letter to myself or if I was just going to sit and listen and kind of go into it on my own, like during a meditation sometimes. What prompted you to add this letter to your Black girl self section?
Well, so two things. One, with the Know This, I knew Black women were introducing a lot of concepts that not all Black girls, I think the sweet spot for the book is like 15 to college. Mm-hmm. But younger girls are reading it, and I wanted them to know where, like, if they wanted to learn more about Audre Lorde or, what are the awesome women or points in history that a woman brought up, I wanted them to know, where to get a little bit more information. I also wanted there to be support. We know that not every Black girl lives in a supportive environment. I wish all girls did. But, if there are girls who are dealing with suicidal ideation or sexual assault and they don't know where to go, I wanted to give them some resources where they could, non-judgmental resources. And then it's kind of cathartic to write letters. And Renee, maybe you could talk a little more about that. And I didn't want girls to miss out on that opportunity to kind of know something about themselves and give themselves affirmations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you make, because oftentimes we have seen people say, stand in the mirror and say, "I love myself." And we kind of laugh at that because it sounds silly. But I had a conversation the other day, and it was with Tamara, and it was like, do we value ourselves? Do we really value ourselves? Because why is it so difficult to talk to ourselves in such a transparent way and to be open? And I think a lot of that just comes from, being torn down, being, in a position where you don't feel like you matter. And those expectations and those stereotypes that are put on Black girls carry on to the bigger Black girl who's an adult, and you're really speaking to that little girl inside of you who still needs love and nurturing. So if you didn't get that growing up and now you're an adult, it's very hard to turn around and be self-affirming. And we teach our girls how to get there. As we said tomorrow, we teach them how to get there, but we don't teach them what to do once they're there in adulthood, and how to love on yourself. And so the letter writing process, at least for me, was tapping into the 16-year-old Renee and being what she needed at a time when I didn't have it.
That's very well said. I am obviously over the age range that you all said. This book is the sweet spot for this book. But what I did was I read it cover to cover, and then getting ready for this, I went back and looked at it again, and I looked at like which chapter would be, the chapter I wish that I had read, or had when I was 16, and what's my favorite chapter now. And my favorite chapter for when I was 16 would be Black Girl Interrupted Mental Health. That's chapter 6. But my favorite chapter now is Girl Listen. advice. Chapter 8. There's just something about that chapter where, you know, girl, listen. And there was just how people talked about, you know, the things that we don't want to give advice about, you know, about friendships and about love and about all of, I feel like the common thread in chapter 8 was valuing yourself and loving yourself. That was the common thread in every letter every woman wrote. Which of the chapters are you all's favorite and why?
So my favorite is the family chapter, the It For Real Takes a Village, because it paints, so, you know, I love my family. I grew up in a really supportive family and a traditional family. You know, my parents have been married more than 50 years and I have a brother and a sister. But I know so many more women and girls whose families don't look like that, and they love their families fiercely too. And I hate the way that Black families, because they don't look like what society deems an acceptable family. And it's important to point out that a recent Pew study said there is no standard picture of a family anymore. There is none. Not Black, not white, like not Latinx, not anybody. But our families have been pathologized. And I want girls to know that, you know, whether, you know, you are being raised by your grandparents, as many Black girls are, whether you are adopted, whether, you know, you're a queer girl and you've had to make your own family because your own, you know, your family doesn't support you, so your friends are your family. Whether you were chosen, whether you got play aunties and play cousins, like whatever that is, if you have people that hold you and hold you down, that is family and that's valid. And so many of the stories that women shared in that chapter, like I that resonate with me. Like I love Rochelle Riley wrote about being raised by her grandparents and her grandfather buying her a car, you know, when she needed one to get to her internship and she thought she couldn't do it. Like that reminds me of so many good men in my family. So I think there's something everyone can relate to, and it kind of shows you how, you know, family is not what, it doesn't have to be blood. It is blood, doesn't have to be blood.
And Renee, which one was your favorite?
I think for me, it would be chapter 5. I didn't ask for this tough stuff, not necessarily because I'm in that chapter, but I resonate with real stories, women that are telling experiences of things that they've been through. I think there is something, you know, very therapeutic to be able to hear someone speak their truth and to find that place in yourself where it resonates. Because your mother, your parents, your teachers, your father, they can all minister to you and say, do this and do that. But there is something so transparent when someone else talks about what they've been through. And inside of you, it's like that aha moment where the light switch goes off and it all makes sense. And we've all can attest to a time where that has happened. So, you know, though the stories in that chapter are tough, they are difficult. Some of them, honestly, you have to put the book down for a second and process. It's important that we understand that there's a community out there of women who went through and came out of, which in turn tells the next generation that you can go through and you can come out.
I agree. Would this be a good time for you to read your letter to us? Is this a great segue? I think so too, sis. I loved your letter.
Thank you.
Take it away.
I appreciate that.
Of course.
So my letter.
Renee, could you, before you read, because you didn't get a fancy introduction, could you, before you read your letter, can you just give people a few sentences about your wonderful self?
I can do that. So I am Renee Alston, but I am also Jules NYC. I host a radio show called Dropping Jules Radio every Friday night on WKCR 89.9 FM in New York City. It's at 9 p.m. And then from the live show All of those previous shows can be found on all major streaming sites such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And my show is specifically for Black culture. It is putting a spotlight on Black men and women doing amazing things, not just celebrities, but people in the community, because oftentimes the media doesn't give us the spotlight we deserve. And to have transparent conversations like this, like the stories that are in Tamara's book, is what I am really passionate about. So this project resonated with me so much because it's what I do. It's what I believe that collectively as Black people, the storytelling in our lineage, whether you were in the kitchen cleaning collard greens for Thanksgiving, or, you know, sitting around with your uncle, you know, with them sandals on at the grill, you know, we all have these stories that just resonate with us. And it's important that we tell them not just privately, but publicly as well, to shape who we are and to hopefully break some of the stereotypes that are out there about Black and brown people. So now we will get into the letter, and the letter can be found on page 109. What's good? The reason I decided to write this letter is because you might be where I was at 16. When I was 16 years old, I was arrested. I had run away from home because my mother and I were not getting along. I ended up without any money or a place to stay. I came up with the bright idea to rob a taxi cab driver at knife point. I was not raised to be violent, and I didn't want to do it, but I was desperate. I ended up being arrested and catching felony charges. I spent some time locked up in adult population, and eventually I was released but put on probation. When I was incarcerated, no one came to see me. All my so-called friends disappeared, and even family support was limited. There were days I used to stare out of my cell window, looking at cars on the highway and wishing I was a passenger going anywhere but where I was. Deep down, I knew I didn't belong in jail. I was smart, talented, and creative, but I took responsibility for doing something wrong. The good part is, in that moment in my life, that was not the end of my story. What I do want you to take from this letter is know that where you are now does not have to be indicative of where you will end up in life. Even during incarceration, you have a choice in how your life shapes up. Make the most of your time by reading, writing, and setting goals for the future. Your body may be locked up, but your mind is not. You matter, and you have something to offer. Never let anyone tell you that you don't. We all make mistakes in life, and we are all worthy of forgiveness and a new page to start over. I know being positive in this situation is not easy. I know there are days you miss your family and your freedom. Some correctional officers will not treat you fairly. There are days where you will be filled with rage. You were not put on earth to give in to that anger. You were put here to be a light and a vessel of greatness with endless possibilities. I believe in you. I am rooting for your success and your happiness. Chin up, baby girl. Queens, don't let other queens drop their heads or standards. I'll be praying for you, Renee.
Awesome, that was so beautiful. When I read that story, I was really moved by you saying, you know, you don't have to let your current circumstance, you know, deal with your future, and you gave examples of what they should do, you know, while they were in the circumstance, like read and all the other things. I read that a couple of times because one of my favorite phrases is "what's good." So I loved the way you wrote that letter, and I really thank you for sharing your story with the rest of us.
Thank you.
I also love that you acknowledged that girls may feel angry because, you know, because of all the stereotypes, we're very often told to bottle up our anger. And girls have a lot of reasons to be angry. I mean, the way girls are being pushed out of schools, Black girls are the fastest growing group in the juvenile justice system. So a lot of girls are going to find themselves in this situation, and they're going to need our help to get through it. And it just, you know, sometimes when I read Renee's letter, it makes me teary because Black girls don't get second chances and they're judged so harshly. And, you know, there's so much opportunity to extinguish really bright, amazing, creative lights because of that. And I love that letter. So thank you for trusting me with it.
No, thank you. It's interesting you say that, because I remember standing in a courtroom, and this was my first offense. I was an honor roll student. I didn't get into trouble, but you know, my family dynamic with my mother is what it is. It, you know, it wasn't the best, and I understand that she had me young. You know, she may have done what she thought she was, you know, good at that time, but it wasn't. And that was my way of running away, was to escape to something else, you know? And the judge said, "You are a menace to society." And I will never forget that, because I was like, a menace to society is like people that shoot up a bunch of buildings and stuff. Like, you know, that's not me. But something about that really upset me, because I knew to my core that he had dismissed me simply because I made a mistake at 16. I mean, they put me in adult population, and there was a correctional officer who used to bring me McDonald's, true story, used to bring me McDonald's, and she said, "You are so smart. You should not be here, and you should never, ever come back to jail." But she saw in me what society was not willing to see based off of one occurrence. And my desire to write this letter is to say that we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater because someone does something wrong. You know, we have to let people know that I don't care what you did, you have to own it. You have to take accountability, and then you have to say, I made this bed, but this is not my future. I can do great things, and our Black girls can do great things.
They can.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the entire book could be taught in a classroom or in a summer camp. How would you ladies say one should use the book, you know, after we read it and do the journal prompts? What are other exercises that we can do with our young Black girls?
Well, actually, if anybody watching goes to my website, which is tamarawinfreyharris.com, I actually created a reader experience kit. You can download it for free. And there are additional questions that go with each chapter. And what I really hope is that, you know, women and girls will read it together. You know, moms will read it with their daughters, or, you know, just trusted woman girl groups. So there are additional questions to kind of engage with each chapter. I also worked with a psychologist and an educator for some hints to make good intergenerational conversation, because, you know, there's a power dynamic there. You know, when it's mom and kid or grandma and kid, that makes, like, if everybody wants to feel safe and being open and saying what they really feel, there have to be some rules put in place. And there's also a neat playlist created by a 17-year-old Black girl and some paper dolls that I love, that I'm too old to play with, but I still love them.
That's amazing, the playlist. You know, I'm in the playlist. Renee, do you have any suggestions?
I think it's important that we continue the conversation. You know, sharing this book, not just with family, but other Black girls in your community. You know, we have to understand that there are different ways that we have to resonate with our girls, and it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's simply like this book is. They're Black girls. They're letters for everyone. And so you need to really reach back and make sure that you're mentoring. And even if it's a situation where the household doesn't have like a mother or father that's there to mentor, or it may have a mother and she's struggling, this book can help her too. So we just really need to be a village and have conversation even outside of our family, but with young Black girls in general.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Mentorship is so important because I've benefited from mentorship, and now it's time for me to do my part. And so I'm definitely gonna get one of these books and help others. I have one more question, but I wanted to know, is there anything that I've not asked that you all want to talk about? We could go all night.
I would say, and I know I'm going to close out reading the epilogue, which kind of explains everything that I want girls and women to take away from the book. But I would say for those people who have read it and think the book is valuable, to please, my goal is to get this into as many Black girls' hands as possible, especially the ones that are often forgotten by girls groups and, you know, school run groups. And, you know, I want it to get to them. So if you know a girl who needs it, consider like buying a book and donating it to a group, you know, donating it to girls who may be coming out of incarceration. You donate it to, you know, organizations that work with queer Black girls who are often forgotten in a lot of programs, or just buy a book for a girl in your life who you think needs it. So I hope Black women will pass this wisdom on and write your own letter to a Black girl.
I think we need a Dear Black Girl convention, hint, hint.
That was actually one of my questions, because I have a few more. One of them is, after you all have written, has there been an opportunity for all of the letter writers to get together on Zoom or some other way, probably Zoom since we've been in a pandemic, to kind of just like congratulate each other of all the success of the book?
I'm working on that. The quarantine is really hard, but I do want all the letter writers because, like, you know, they're such amazing women, and like I want some of them to meet you need to meet this person. So I'm working on doing that. I am also going to have a book club this summer. So for anyone who follows me on social media, I'm going to do a 5 or 6 week book club and hopefully get letter writers to come in with me and discuss different chapters of the book. So that'll be an opportunity too.
Awesome. And you're talking about writers. What advice would you give aspiring writers who want to tell their story or want to do something similar as this book, a collection of stories? What advice would you give them?
You know, it's funny. I just read an article, wrote an article called Dear Black Woman Writer, actually about a month ago. And the advice I gave is to write, first of all. You don't need to be published to be a writer. All you have to do is write and make space for it. And I said, write true. So use your voice and bring all your experiences to it. And don't think you have to change your voice or your tone or your words in order to make something worth reading. Read, because good writers read. So spend a lot of time in your local library, and publish. While it's okay to write things just for yourself, our voices are needed. There are enough Black women voices out there. And we're in a moment where people are actually listening. So seize that moment.
Publishing, that brings me to, I'd like to end with this question, if possible, and have you go into the epilogue before we do our Q&A. How was it to get published? As you mentioned, publishing, sometimes we've been deterred to publish, or I've heard stories where we haven't had an opportunity to be published often. Can you talk about your journey getting published?
It was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, and it's a lot of work. And it's my goal. I will tell anybody who asks me the process of getting traditionally published, because I don't think we should give up on it. it is a lot. It is a lot of work. It took me 3 years to just write the proposal for my first book. But it was worth it. And I wanted to do that because I was a nerdy little kid who liked to spend time in libraries. And I wanted to see my book on library shelves and bookstore shelves so that another woman or girl could discover it the way that I discovered so many books. So I think, traditional publishing is worth the time and effort.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've definitely inspired me. So I want to write a book as well.
Do it.
Would you please read us the epilogue?
I will. And the epilogue is called Pick Up Your Oyster Knife. And I hope everybody recognized the Zora Neale Hurston reference. I love you, Black girl. I love Black girls in Afro puffs and Black girls in bundles of Remy. I love the daddy's girls and the fatherless ones. I love the little sisters who make straight A's and the ones who skip school. I love the hood girls and the suburban girls and the country girls too. I love the quiet girls and loud girls, the lip smacking, smart talking ones. I love the saved girls and the heathens. I love the girls who stay in sweatshirts and J's and the ones in the tight Fashion Nova fits. I love the happy girls and the anxious girls and the girls battling depression. I love the trans girls living defiantly. I love the girls in the library and the ones on the basketball court. I love the virgins and the young mamas. I love the girly girls and the butch girls. I love the girls who fight. I love the girls who love boys and the girls who love girls and the girls who love both or neither. I love you, Black girl, unconditionally, and whether you are 15 or 50. You hear me today. I love you whether you look or act like they say you should. You are not wrong. And when you are wrong, I love you with all your flaws. No matter what choices and mistakes you have made, no matter where you live, no matter what you look like, no matter what thing has happened to you. The greatest thing you can learn is to love yourself unconditionally too. Maybe the hardest thing you have to learn. I hope the letters in this book have shown you how. One other thing, Black girl, you must learn to love other Black women and girls the same way. Love us whether we look or act like they say we should. We are not wrong. And when we are wrong, love us with all our flaws. No matter what choices and mistakes we have made, no matter where we live, no matter what we look like, no matter what thing has happened to us. Now, this doesn't mean you have to become a target for another Black girl's pain or anger or trauma. Doesn't mean you have to silence yourself in the face of Black women. It means you must give your sisters grace and understanding, the benefit of the doubt. So few people give us that. We owe it to each other. We have to acknowledge each other's humanity, even, maybe, especially when we are walking away. I hope the letters in this book have shown you how to do that too. Because we are sisters, Black girl. We have to take care of each other and ourselves. You are me, I am you, and we are all right. Inside each of us are tiny pieces of our foremothers. Sarah Boone's ingenuity, Danielle Luna's unforgettable beauty, Toni Morrison's incomparable wisdom, Mamie Till's fierce love, Aretha Franklin's creativity, Marsha P. Johnson's fearlessness, Harriet Tubman's will to survive, Katherine Johnson's genius, Michelle Obama's grace. Black girls are made of all that magic, birthed in the African sun, baptized by the Middle Passage, and burnished by America. That is a power no one else can claim, just us. We are sisters. You are me, I am you, and we will get free together. Zora Neale Hurston, a great Black woman writer, once said, "I do not weep at the world. I am too busy sharpening my oyster knife." An oyster knife is a utensil used to crack open the shell of an oyster to get the tasty meat inside. Zora meant that she wasn't wasting time thinking about the hard parts of being Black and a woman, and she didn't care what other people said about her. She was busy trying to get at all the good stuff life had to offer. Celebrate your Black girl life. Celebrate us. Be like Zora and get that oyster girl.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Y'all, I don't think anybody would be mad if Tamara and Leslie made an appearance on Renee's radio show. I don't think anybody would be mad. This
Definitely
conversation
not.
was beautiful. I have to say, I think that like y'all touched on so much, and like this conversation reminded me of how important it is that, you know, how important books like this are. I have a best friend who's an author, and he's a gay Black man, and like his poetry is like some of the first that I've ever read where like you see yourself in literature. So I really hope that the folks who are reading this are really feeling that warmth and embrace, you know? Um, so the first question that we have, and feel free to answer as well, Renee, but the first question is, who are some of the Black women who helped you step into your own power?
Oh, wow. Definitely, you know, my mom definitely is an example of, you know, the kind of woman that I want to be. And then I've always been blessed with like some amazing friends. Like I look around at the Black women who surround me and I'm like, man, how did I get these amazing people in my life? And they really do hold me and hold me down. And they, you know, as Kanye said, I've got dope friends and they do dope things. And they make me dope as well. And also, you know, several years ago, I started doing family research and genealogy and like uncovering the stories of the women in my family who came before me, and how amazing they were. You know, you tend to not see your grandmother, great grandmothers and stuff as like people, you know. But you know, I found like poetry from one of my great grandmothers that she wrote regularly on a farm in Alabama. And like those stories sustain me, and I hope make me an all right Black woman.
Renee, would you like to answer, or you're going. Okay.
You know, for me, I can say, you know, as we've talked about, grandmothers are like unicorns. They are the best thing in the world, and mine has passed away, but she was very influential in my upbringing, learning how, you know, domestic living and just how to go about yourself in the world, the things that we often take for granted. But I think that what is important to understand is that even when you become an adult, you still need the nurturing of a mother. And so when my grandmother passed on, it was this nervousness because, you know, I'm not close with my own mother. And it's like, well, who do you call when you need that adult womanly advice? You know, and sometimes your friends, they be over you. They be like, girl, I don't got time. But my mother, yeah, that's the truth. But my mother-in-law, honestly and truthfully, has been very influential in the shaping of who I am today, even as a wife and even rolling into 40, because there are things that you don't know when you're 20, there are things you don't know when you're 30. And to be you know, in a relationship with a woman who is successful and who takes on the role as a mother figure, not just because I'm married to her son, but because she just has the wisdom in her to give and to nurture, is just a blessing. And I do not take that for granted.
Yes. Y'all really have a way with words. Let's see where y'all are right now. I agree. Like, so like you, Renee, you said something. It kind of sounded like a colloquialism, but like my mom is filled with like a lot of colloquialisms, like, you know, be there in a few shakes of a lamb's tail and a bunch of other stuff that we grew up hearing. So I told her, like, just hearing that just like takes me back to my childhood and hearing those things. Next question is, Renee mentioned affirmations during the conversation. Tamara and Renee, what are your current affirmations?
My current affirmation right now is that I don't care how many people make the same dish that I make, nobody brings the flavor that I bring to it. And I say that because we get discouraged in following our dreams because other people are doing it. If it's for you, God will make space for you to do it. And 50 million people can have a radio show, but it ain't dropping jewels. So I tell myself that every single day. And I also stand behind the impossible is always possible. You just got to figure out how to do it.
And I've been telling myself that it's okay to just be and not do all the time. Renee and I were actually talking about this weekend, this push that sometimes Black women have to always be doing, always be achieving, always be pushing. You know, I have so many friends that have, you know, did 3 hustles, 5 side hustles, sorority, kids, husband, like there's an endless list, and they never sit down and they're always tired. And that constant tiredness and constant being strong and doing is killing us in a lot of ways. And so I am trying to now remind myself. I became a certified yoga teacher last year during quarantine. So I'm trying to remind myself to just breathe and sit sometimes.
Yes. Congrats on becoming a certified yoga instructor.
Yes.
Stay, everybody.
What can't she do, you know?
Right.
It's gonna be the Dear Black Girl tree pose. I see it.
Right. So we have time for one more question. And I actually think it would be interesting to hear from all 3 of you for this question. But the question is, what is Black womanhood to you?
Ooh. Oh, it's so hard to put into words. It is everything. It is strength, and it is love, and it is, like Renee said, it's flavor. Like nobody can do it like. That's why I love conversations like this, because there's nothing like having a conversation with 3 Black women. It's just, it's magic. You know, I say in the book, you know, the woman who coined the term Black girl magic mentions how, you know, all she saw around her were Black women who knew how to make things out of no thing. And that's what magic is like to her. And so it really is, you know, not, and that's not saying we're invincible or that we're not human, but there is something, I think, magic in us.
Yeah, Black women are the sonic boom of the earth. That's just it. We are the sonic boom of the earth. And that is no shade to anyone else of any minority or ethnicity, but Black women carry the bosom of this country on their backs and still do. And that is something that should be applauded and appreciated each and every day. Every Black man needs to salute Black women. Anyone that dies, we're the first one on the front lines of protest. We are the advocates. We are the doulas. We are the doulas to this country. And so for us, being a Black woman in womanhood means solidarity with other Black women, that we don't break the chain and let each other fall, that we don't hate on our sister because she got on a nice lipstick and we just hating. You know, it is standing together in the trenches, arm in arm, to understand that I want to win, but I want you to win too. So when I get to the top, I'm going to turn around and reach my hand back and bring you with me, and you're going to reach your hand back and bring the next girl with you. And if we constantly remind ourselves of what it took for us to get in spaces, especially places where we're the only one, that we have an obligation to bring others with us, because it's not a badge of honor to be the only one if you're not bringing someone with you. That is the key to Black womanhood. That is the key to our magic. That is the key to all of us excelling and succeeding as we have done for 400 years.
Wow, I have to echo what both Tamara and Renee said, but the first thing that came to my mind, in addition to what they said, the first thing that came to my mind with that question was femininity.
Mm.
We're just soft, beautiful beings. And I know that society has said we're hard and we're this and we're that, but it's so incorrect. We are very feminine and we're soft and we're loving and kind and gentle.
And I have a question. Renee, when is your book coming out? Because girl,
Listen, that's loaded. That's loaded. I was supposed to write a book for a very, very long time. And I'll just be really transparent. I started and I stopped, and then I'm like, I don't know if people are going to want to listen. And I know that that's just me being in my head. Like, I know that. So I'm just grateful to have my radio show, Dropping Jewels Radio, where I can say some of this, but I definitely need to put it down because the Renee and the Jules NYC story is a deeper one. I mean, I used to sleep under the White Stone Bridge in New York City. So when people sit and say what they can't do, I used to sleep under a bridge. I used to get on the A train and ride it from 205 to Far Rockaway. No exaggerations. I know that you could take whatever life gives to you and make something out of it. I know it. So book soon come.
So I want to close by saying we do want to hear your story.
Absolutely.
And when it comes out, we have a date. Tattered book. I want you to have us back, and I want to interview Renee.
Yes, and Devin has to come too because I love him. And Leslie too.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yes.
Oh my God, y'all, this has been so fantastic. To everybody who's watching, I really hope that y'all have enjoyed this conversation and this energy and this love. Someone just commented, Crystal just said, yes, Renee.
Thanks, Crystal.
So, but before we sign off, I do want to give each of you, Leslie, you included, an opportunity to remind everyone who you are and where folks can find you.
Tamara Winfrey Harris. You can find me on my website, tamarawinfreyharris.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at What Tammy Said, TAMI, and on Instagram and Facebook at Tamara Winfrey Harris. Please support local independent bookstores, including Tattered Cover.
I'd like to thank Tamara Winfrey Harris for having me here, Tattered Cover, for even having this event. I think it's amazing to be in conversation. I am Jules NYC, Renee Alston. I host Dropping Jewels Radio every Friday night at 9 p.m. on WKCR 89.9 FM in New York City. You can find me on Instagram at Jules, JEWELZ NYC. That's my Instagram handle. And when you go there, you'll have a link in the bio to go to droppingjewelsradio.com. You can find all of my content on the website through all major streaming platforms. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you. Thank you so much.
And I am Leslie Williams. I'm the Senior Librarian of the Pauline Robinson Branch Library of Denver Public Library. And you can find us at denverlibrary.org. Thank you so much, Devin and Tamara and Renee, for having me. This has been a fantastic experience that I will not forget soon.
Yes. Thank you again to everybody who's watching. Please visit Tattered Cover's website and denverlibrary.org for any more information about our happenings. And again, thank you for watching. Everybody have a great evening. Also, our guests, please remember to stay on for a brief second.